What's good, everyone? It's your boy Dak908, aka the Dig Dug himself, and today, guys, I just want to give my quick thoughts on how the whole first wave of the beta went. The first wave of the beta was just for PlayStation players. Now the second wave is going to be for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation players. That, as I'm recording, will be going down technically later tonight, but I just want to give my thoughts and impressions after playing the game for about 7 hours or so. Would have loved to play a lot more, but, you know, work and obligations, etc. Nevertheless, what I want to talk about is, first, let's talk about the weapons. Okay, I don't necessarily have a lineup of things I want to talk about. I'm just gonna remember off the top of my head things I want to talk about. But anyway, the weapons. So I've decided to use the light bow gun, and the light bow gun is fun. Now, mind you, I've never really used the light bow gun before, so me going into the light bow gun in this game is my first time. So everything is new and everything is fresh, and I actually am quite having a bit of fun with it. Mind you, I will say there seems to be a lack of pizzazz. I'm guessing that's because once you actually get the game itself and you start making mix sets and whatnot, understanding the weapon a lot more. I have yet to actually have my bowgun teacher hop on and tell me how to play the game because she doesn't have a PlayStation 5, so I'll be learning more about the light bowgun when the next beta comes around. So if you think my gameplay is pretty cheeks, I'm sorry, but it's just the best I can do for the time being. With that said and whatnot, I do have lots of gameplay where I played the lance, the gun lance, switch axe, sword and shield, great sword, charge blade, hammer, basically everything except the heavy bowgun, dual blades, longsword, insect glaive, and hunting horn. So every other weapon I've actually used, and I'll have to say that every single weapon I have used, it has been amazing. So if you're a fan of whatever weapon that you have, in the weapons that I just mentioned, the lance, gun lance, sword and shield, great sword, charge blade, hammer, light bow gun, switch axe, if you like those weapons, I can attest that these weapons are going to be really good. They're going to feel really great. They are honestly some of the weapons that a lot of people tend to use. I haven't really tried the longsword yet, but people have told me the longsword is great. So for the most part, if you're worried about how your weapon will feel in this game, trust me, your weapon is going to be fine. There are some weapons that kind of feel a little different. I'm looking at you, sword and shield and lance. They feel a little different. There's certain things about them that aren't the same as what they used to be, but you can still find the remnants of what made those weapons great in there as well. So I don't think it's going to be too hard to actually acclimate yourself to the new way the weapon itself works. So I imagine you all will be fine. And for the lance, I will say the counter is very awkward because it's not the same button combination we've used for the past 30 years. They actually changed it so that way the counter itself pops up midway through a combo route that you do, and this is the thing that happens for a lot of other weapons. So if a particular attack that you're used to using is quote-unquote missing, fear not, start a combo. As you go through that combo route, that attack will actually pop up. So the monsters that we got to actually fight, so we have Rey Dau. My group, we're calling Raymond because everyone loves Raymond, because everyone loves Rey Dau. Even I love the guy, so everyone likes Ray, aka Raymond. Shout out to the big homie Raymond. He's amazing. This guy right here, the railgun wyvern, if you will, everything about him is sick. The fight is sick. We will talk about his fight later. I have other gameplay that I'm probably going to break down for you. Probably not today, but over the course, like once the beta is done and I can get my full piece and thoughts on like everything, because I want to get a bunch of gameplay out to you guys so that way you can see what's happening. But later on, I'll break down like everything that I can tell you about the monsters themselves. Again, I've only ever really got a chance to play a few hours here and there, and really not enough to give my full opinion on how the things works, especially since the game itself isn't in its full completion, and the context which can give these things in are going to be, I guess, relatively, you know, on spot on when the game itself comes out. But I don't like to give full, like, this is exactly how it's going to work, and I don't know, who's to say they patch out a weapon or change not patch out a weapon, but patch out a particular ability, change how something works or whatever. Or it doesn't really matter because the monster stuff isn't even out yet, so, well, because the game's not out yet, so who really cares? But I will say that he is amazing. The small aesthetic things about him is quite literally insane. The sounds that he makes, his attacks themselves, the amount of damage he does, his coloring, his ecology, everything about him is super sick, and I love him to death. Now, outside of Ray, there is Gus, who is Dashugama, I think is how you actually pronounce his name. The dog thing's the first monster we saw in the very first trailer of this game. That guy is sick. He's a lot of fun, but he is incredibly frustrating. One thing that I'm feeling when I look at him is he reminds me a lot of Anjanath. So Anjanath, or Andrew as I like to call him, is, in my opinion, the most important monster in 5th gen Monster Hunter because he was the first monster we all got to see. Now, mind you, me and you, the everyday Monster Hunter, we've been around the bush many times. we was gonna get the game anyway. But for new players, seeing Anjanath, people were like, this is a dinosaur hunting game. That's a dinosaur. We all know that he was a blue wyvern, but the layman didn't know that. So will I say he has the same effect as Anjanath does? Probably not, but I will say that Doshigama is still a really cool monster, even though he does have a lot of those same characteristics that Anjanath would have, meaning a lot of his attacks carry not the same properties, but have kind of the same effect. One of the big ones that I could note is that he has delays on some of his attacks, and one of these attacks is where he grinds his face into the ground and kicks up a huge wave. That we're lovingly referred to as the Gamma Wave because, you know, the Incredible Hulk in fighting games or whatever, but this attack does insane amounts of damage, and I akin it to very much the way that Anjanath would do the same thing by throwing his nose in the ground and kind of just running forward. It'll do like 80% of your health bar every single time, and Doshigama has the exact same thing. Outside of the fact that he himself is a pack monster, if you don't know, I will tell you right now, if you have to fight a Doshigama and he's rolling with his group of homies, the way to get rid of all of his homies and leave the main one there is to fire off a large dung pod. So you have dung pods and you have large dung pods. Large dung pods disperse packs, so that way all that's left is the one monster you're actually fighting. Really interesting mechanic, I quite like it, so that way you can actually focus on the one monster you're fighting instead of getting jumped from all sides. Outside of those things, he himself isn't too crazy of a monster, but there's a lot of things about him that you can clearly tell they put a lot of time and care into him, because he himself has like a rage mode, a proper rage mode, very similar to like Nergigante would have, or any other monster that goes from like level 1 to like level 2, or like level 1 or base rather to like Super Saiyan. Think like Zenoga or something like that when it gets fully charged up. Once he's close to death, it usually happens when he's close to death. Once he's close to death, he gets really enraged, and like a lot of his attacks will either do more damage. They don't necessarily take on new properties, but you can clearly see that he's more than normal miffed, okay? I like how a monster like him, who would probably just be a tier 2 monster, they put a lot of effort into showing that he's different from your garden variety monsters. So that's actually really sick. I quite like the fact that they did that. And for him to be a fanged beast of all things, to actually look very, very different, but almost like a Galsarog on all fours, is pretty sick to me. Next monster I want to talk about is going to be the Chatacabra. Now the Chatacabra is so sick. He's basically Chatacabra, but not really. I say this because even though they have the same suffix, the cabra part, they are amphibians, but they don't share the same skeleton. If I'm not mistaken, from what I'm hearing in the grapevine and whatnot, he's actually closer to like a fanged beast than that of an amphibian, because of the way he actually carries himself. Certain attacks that he actually has leads him to use his hands, whereas, you know, amphibians, they really don't. They kind of like, well, Chatacabra uses his mouth, his tusks and whatnot, and what he does with his mouth, which is just using his tongue to do like a bit of a lashing, is about as far as it goes when it comes to that. But realistically, he as a monster isn't too crazy. A very good beginner monster, like super good beginner monster, in my opinion. Probably one of the best beginner monsters we've ever had. Even better than, in my opinion, that of Great Jaguars, because Great Jaguars didn't have a whole lot of different things about him, whereas Chatacabra kind of does. There's certain things that he will do that he wouldn't do in other circumstances, be it rage or not rage, be the fact that he has actually more attacks than what Great Jaguars would have, because Great Jaguars just kind of threw himself at you. Chatacabra kind of does the same thing because he's supposed to be a very easy monster, but there's very distinguishable things that he will do, like as far as attacks go. You know that he will throw his body at you. You know he'll actually swing his hands at you. He'll throw his tongue at you. He'll backdrop on you. Like a couple of the things that he does that aren't super over the top, but show enough nuance to know that he himself is a monster with a lot of variation. And sometimes learning to adjust to different variables while playing Monster Hunter is honestly 95% actually learning how to play the game very well. And if you can instill that into a new age hunter, or rather a new hunter, as they go in from the very first monster they fight, is amazing. So hats off to Capcom for doing that in this monster for what it is. Now I want to talk about the environment. So I'm not gonna hold you guys. You know what this place is called. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I don't know the name of this place, but I will say this massive desert biome, if you will, is pretty cool. Now, the one thing I noted about it is that comparing this game directly to World is right, but also wrong. It's right because it's the last monster in the game to be made on a scale as such, but it's wrong because you should probably compare it closer to that of Rise, and I'll explain. So World was a much more lush and dense game, but there's a lot more smaller things going on, the very tiny things like the endemic life and so on, which is still a thing in here, don't get it wrong, that's still in here. But more so Rise was more wide open. Now the problem that a lot of games, every game, this goes back to as far as open world games were even invented, was how big should our open world be, or our sandbox, if you will, be, because I will say it's more of a sandbox as opposed to an open world. A sandbox is a giant area that's open, and then it's sectioned off by other giant areas, whereas an open world is just one giant area that has everything in it. So yeah, I think I kind of explained it pretty well-ish, maybe. Nevertheless, so this is more like World, because there's a lot of small nuanced things, but more like Rise because it's wide and open. So realistically, the scale in which this world is, this area is pretty dope. It gives you that sense of epicness, but at the same time, not in this game, but a lot of issues that other people fall into is that if you make your world too open, you fill it with nothing. Where it's like miles and miles of featureless sand, or featureless, I know it's gonna sound weird, but featureless like forest, where there isn't anything in the forest that you need to actually be doing. In this game, not so much. There is a bit of vastness to it, and it is a bit empty, but when it gets empty, you have to also remember this is a desert. What desert has incredible amounts of like dense things in it? Not very many, and when there is the dense moments, you will find it, and it's actually very fitting. So the scale of the world is very good. The fact that they give you a mount also has to lead itself into the fact that it's, again, more open, because in World you didn't technically quote-unquote have a mount. You could very well traverse the whole thing on foot. They did give you tail radius later on, but the maps themselves weren't too big where traversing it on foot would be the biggest pisser. Where in Rise, the worlds, where the areas were just big enough to where traversing the whole thing on foot would suck. That's why they gave us the Palico, or the Palamute rather. So in this game, it's a mix of both. You get the highly specialized things, the highly detailed things when it is detailed and when it needs to be detailed of World, and then the openness of Rise, meshing them together to make a sandbox that's actually not necessarily on par with how the real world is, but very much feels more livable and more believable than what Rise had to offer, and more epic than what World had to offer. So literally they had their cake and ate it too. So that's what's up. They cooked and ate and left no crumbs. Simply amazing. The last thing I want to talk about though is going to be something, a bit of a contention. It's kind of what I want to put at the end. I praised everything thus far, but this is the one part where I'm going to not necessarily praise. I'm going to draw a bit of concern. And it's not concerning, but you know, a tiny warning. There's 4 months before this game comes out in February. Wait, November, December, January, yeah, 4 months. Like almost 5 months, because I think it's coming out at the end of February, close to the end of February, and as I'm speaking, it's not technically November yet, so, you know. Anyway, so about 4 months of the game comes out, and the performance of the game, at least on PlayStation, isn't superb. It's still good. Don't get me wrong, it's still good, it's just not superb. So I played the game in both, I guess, normal mode, and I played it in performance mode, and I played it with 120 hertz, a hertz monitor, and just 60 FPS. I played in all forms, a combination of all of them as well. And the game, it struggles to hit 60. You'll get in places when it's just like, yikes. And then you'll get in other places where it's like, wow, it feels amazing. And I will say the best place the game runs is in the desert. Now, I'm not no super tech genius on this. I don't necessarily know how to like calculate all these things, but I really wish I could figure out like how to see if it's frame drops or if it's frame pacing that's an issue, because it really does feel like the game is running at 60, but it kind of feels a little janky at times. As far as like resolution of the hunt itself, or the game itself goes, I didn't necessarily notice anything different until I took the game out of like quality mode, then put it into performance mode. And at that point, the game literally looked like it was running at 720p. Like, it may have been, may not have been, I'm not sure, but it wasn't nice. But I also want to say it was probably a dynamic frame rate, because there were instances wherein the frame rate not the frame, but the resolution definitely dipped. And then there were also instances when it kind of went back up again, but it never quite got back as high as what it was when I was in quality mode. However, the gameplay ran technically smoother in that instance too. So when I had that performance mode at 120 hertz, I would get over 60, and I would get into the 120 hertz range, well, the 120 frame range and whatnot, and it would definitely get there, but it wasn't super consistent. So what I'm saying is, as far as we're concerned, and it's still just a beta, please guys, this is a beta, the performance isn't super. It's still good. You're not gonna run into any kind of slideshows or anything like that. It's not gonna be like Scarlet and Violet where it was like, oh boy, you know, the game's gonna run fine. It's just that it's not going to be the crispiest of the crisp, because again, it's still a beta and we still got 4 months. So what I'm really thinking that Capcom, who has not like really dealt us a bad hand like really ever when it comes to Monster Hunter, is going to work on it, especially since they had the Monster Hunter game as a like game as a service, like a live service thing. By that I mean a game where they can actively put in patches and whatnot. So basically just like World. So since World came out, they've been really putting forth the effort to make sure the game itself is working really well, and that's probably going to be a thing forever and always. So shout outs to them for doing that. So if you are going to run into issues, don't say it's going to be there when the game launches. There's a great chance they'll probably fix as far as the performance goes, among other things, because we have 4 months. This game is still literally in development. I imagine within 2 months they're going to probably wrap up development and then start working on like shipping the game, but there's definitely time. They finally released, well not finally, this is a time where they release the beta to a game when there's still time to work on the game. Whereas a lot of other games, they'll release a beta to the game and then the game comes out in like 2 weeks and it's like, nothing got fixed. All the issues are still here, that kind of thing. So that's my piece about the game thus far. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the monsters, I love the weapons, I love the environment, and the performance of the game, quite frankly, is still not that bad. I still think it's good. I really do think it's good. I just know that can only just go up from here. So like, this is great hopes for me, because this is my first time playing a game on my PlayStation 5 that I actually care about, because before it was just whatever game I had at hand, PlayStation 4 game. So this is my first PlayStation 5 game from the ground up. So this is going to be sick, and I can't wait for it. It's going to be amazing. I will probably continue playing the game itself on PS5, and probably not on PC, because my PC isn't as strong as isn't as strong as it used to be, given the specs that they're saying you probably would really want to have when you play this game, and I don't necessarily like meet those standards, so we will see. But that being said, everyone, it's been your boy Dak908, aka the Dig Dug himself. Let me know what you guys want to see or hear about this game. I have tons of footage. I will make videos for you guys. I probably will make a couple of meme videos for you guys. I have a couple of fun things that happen here. There is one video I will make, but I'll wait for the end of all the betas to actually make, because it's going to be a pretty saucy topic, and I don't want to do it like while everyone's having a lot of fun. I'll address this at the very end, so there's that. But if you guys have any questions, do you want to hear about weapons, do you want to see some weapons, do you want to see anything, like literally tell me what you want and I will provide it to you. But with that being said, it's been your boy. Take care.
This is a rare research opportunity. Can't let it go to waste.
Time in.